Good morning. Can we talk? It's Robin and Theresa back with lots of subjects to discuss this morning. Robin wants to talk first of all about Ferguson, so do I. I think we're in a national conversation about that in big towns, little towns, and everywhere. So Robin, what have you got for us?
Well, this regular writer in the Morrison County Record, whose name is Joe Nathan, wrote a piece called "It Isn't Just Ferguson, Schools and the Ferguson Case." And it was very well written. I didn't bring that article in, but if you want to look it up, it's on the Morrison County website. "It Isn't Just Ferguson, Schools and the Ferguson Case" is the title of it.
Do we have a date on that one?
It was in last week's paper. Last weekend's no, maybe it was the weekend before. It was the weekend before. And my comments are on the commentary thread, but a lot of people don't have access to a computer and don't read these. And I wanted to let the readers know my opinion on this. And so here's what I wrote. Finally, a voice of reason is published in a weekly news column. Kudos to the writer. One need look no further than Little Falls Police Department or the Morrison County Court for abuse of police and court power. Ask me, I'm aware. I've also been trying my best since 2011 to shed sunlight on this and many other critical issues that plague our nation and this city. I have real reason to believe our local cops have been racially profiling for decades. How do I know this? Because I've spoken with those who have been targeted. Some have contacted me directly. I'm also being stonewalled on getting my data requests on this topic and others. The police and city don't want me to give it to me. Typical, because they know I will make public data available to the public on my blog and on my public access TV, like today. I have thousands of followers and readers. My illegal arrest on June 7th, 2013 was a miscarriage of justice, one of hundreds in this county. Cops or witnesses and judges depend on their testify to prosecute crime. That creates a real conflict of interest if ever there was one. Not only does that affect arrest cases, it also affects divorces of police officers, parental custody, visitation schedules, and much, much more. The cop always wins. How do I know? I was married to a cop for almost 20 years and I still have friends in that field. What I just stated is a rotten, crying shame that this kind of conflict of interest still continues. Soon my attorney and I will be filing an appeal with the Minnesota Court of Appeals. The appeal will cost the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars again. How much public embarrassment is this citizenry willing to tolerate for unjust decisions by people in charge? The smart folks will see how dysfunctional the city council is and the local justice system is. At some point, they better begin uniform enforcement of all laws and get comfortable with dissent, because I'm not going anywhere. Nobody is chasing me out of town. City Hall is exactly the right place to speak out against injustice, eternal war, and demand change, all the way from Little Falls to Washington. It isn't a crime to sit in a chair. It isn't a crime to demand equal treatment. It's a right. It isn't a crime to demand an end to eternal war. It isn't a crime to expose city council operating below the board. It isn't a crime to wear a colorful outfit, hat on my head with signs, or bring signs with what some would categorize as offensive into City Hall. It isn't a crime to bring humor or theater there either. Actually, it's what we need. It isn't a crime to sing a public forum comment, as Larry Fisk, our activist friend, did there. It isn't a crime to wear a hijab, as Theresa did. It isn't a crime to carry a peace flag to the front of City Council to claim peace at City Hall. And it isn't a crime to be me.
Very nice. Very well said. In fact, when you were talking about how it isn't a crime to do these various things, that it's a right, it occurred to me that it could be construed as a duty to raise public awareness of inequities by government officials. And that's exactly what we do.
Actually, it is a duty of all of us to expose when we see things that are injustices or miscarriage of justice or illegal or operating below the board or whatever. How could we ever claim to be a patriot?
If we just sit back and say nothing when we
That's
say
right.
things
If we
like
do
that
nothing.
happening.
If we do nothing. You know, there's this, I hear this adage around here and on the commentary thread about patriotism and through the military that freedom isn't free. Well, free speech isn't free either.
Yeah.
Actually, right now in this city, I'm having to buy my free speech. My free speech costs me $500 a year to rent the bench out of my own pocket. And I want the viewers to know I didn't get a penny from my lawsuit. In fact, I'm indebted thousands of dollars that nobody's going to help me pay back. And I'm economically really strapped.
I know you are.
I can't afford to do anything I've been doing since fall of 2011. This has hurt me greatly financially. My attorneys took every single penny of the $39,500 except for $750, and I have a check to prove this. And that $750 is what it cost me to rent the bench for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got out of it, folks. And so, year after year, my free speech on City Hall property is going to cost me $500. It isn't free.
Not to mention what it costs you to bring this case to court. And, you know, Robin's attorneys offered to represent her pro bono, and which is Latin for the good, for a good purpose. And it means free, essentially. It means we won't charge you. We're doing this for the best interest of the public. So I just want to say that, because then, when there was a little bit of money forthcoming, they stood and lent their hands out and said, "No, can you give us for it?"
Well, for the expenses. My agreement actually said that in the event there was a financial win in any way or settlement, that I would have to pay their expenses, and so I did. And actually, they had a lot more expenses than that. And so
I may be being a little bitter.
well, it just is one of those things.
Yeah.
You know, this has cost me more than it's cost anyone so far. And going forward with the appeal is going to cost me in time and monies. It's going to cost me $1,000 to appeal it. That's money I have to raise or come up with on my own. I don't have that money, but I'm going to figure out a way to have it, because I've been treated differently, unequally, and this wasn't the first time, but that was the major time. And no one's going to bully me. No one's going to step on my rights. I want to make a comment. Now, this is just a statement that I made to both the Lakeland News. They didn't air it. And I also made this comment to the Morrison County Record when they interviewed me on my arrest. And they're claiming it wasn't an arrest. But Chief Shermer's, I have him on audio. I had my cell phone in my hand the whole time during the whole event, and as he was shoving my observer out of the room, he commented that I was under arrest and that this individual needed to leave the room or he'd be under arrest too. Mm-hmm. So you can't have it both ways. If the chief of police here has said that I was under arrest, I was being arrested, and I was held in a locked room by 2 armed officers for 30 minutes, they locked down City Hall, how is that not being arrested?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's clear I was arrested. But of course the media and the Morrison County prosecutor is downplaying that, because they were saying I was escorted out and I was given a citation. Well, in fact, the chief of police stated to me and to my observer, and while Officer Casellas was in the room as well, that I was under arrest. So this is my statement. What's happening locally and with opportunity hoarding is what's wrong with the entire nation. Good old white frat boys and their wives networking, milking the system for all they can get, protecting the bar owner interest, slumlords, and all the rest of their shoulder rubbers who keep things just how they want by influencing cops, counselors, prosecutors, and judges. And on that note, maybe I'll have you read this, Theresa, and I will show some pictures while you're reading this.
Okay.
The local sign ordinance is not being enforced fairly at present, and I have much proof of this. And that's really troubling, because since 2000 I got a data request, and I found out that I was the only person since 2000 that's ever been issued a citation for signs in this city.
Wow.
But there's been countless violators, and right now I believe that our city is in violation of their own sign ordinance. So I'm gonna let you read this, Theresa. That is a comment that I put up about my PERT classes. I was required to do a PERT class, which I completed yesterday, and turned in my certificate to the prosecutor's office. And this post is about that. And then I'm gonna show you some pictures of the most recent blatant, in my opinion, violation of the city sign ordinance. And before you go, Theresa, I just want to read the part of the sign ordinance that pertains to the city's own rules pertaining to them.
Okay.
Signs which are affixed on city property, which L'Auberger Park is city property, it's a city park, which contain information advertising the city itself, city events or city-owned flags, and have been approved by the city council. A city event sign shall not exceed 32 square feet and shall be removed within 5 days after the date of such event. Alderman Crowder asked at the last city council meeting whether or not council had approved this. Obviously they hadn't. I've been recording all the meetings. I've been at all the meetings, and so had he. But it's obvious they didn't approve this, all of this stuff being put in the park. It's a Lindbergh Lions display, and it's a Christmas display. It's a seasonal holiday display that's been typically at the school. And all of a sudden it appears in the city park with, guess what? Lindbergh Lions signs all over it.
Happy holidays.
And they exceed the sign requirements of 32 square feet. I believe this one does.
Uh-huh.
They have more than one. There's also a season's greeting sign.
And those are both in L'Auberger?
The whole thing is in L'Auberger. It's a part, you can see the part of a season's greeting here. It's huge. And I don't know who owns this stuff, and that doesn't really matter, but the fact is, here's the big season's greeting one. The city council never approved this. So who gave authorization for this? When I asked Greg Kimmen, the new public works director who followed in the footsteps of Jerry Lochner, he refused to answer. He said he was looking into it. So, okay, go ahead and go, Theresa.
Alrighty. This is written by Robin on her blog. PERT prevention class and illegal off-premise Lindbergh Lion signs on city property at L'Auberger Park. Naughty, naughty. The PERT prevention class is based on a model of responsible thinking and is supposed to help each individual recognize how being aware of his thoughts and feelings, options, goals, and consequences ultimately will lead to responsible behavior. This is a mandatory part of my sentencing for being convicted of disorderly conduct for sitting in a chair and demanding equal treatment under the law. I believe this sentence was given to publicly embarrass and stain me, to make me look like the problem, to get the focus off the real lawbreakers. Gee, this seems to be a class more appropriate for the council and city attorney who think it is okay to break the law, hide the truth, misuse public funds, illegally solicit donations, illegally fundraise, then lie about it, enforce laws non-uniformly, overlook obvious violations for some people and businesses they like, erect illegal signs and banners on city property in violation of their own sign ordinance, help businesses that are in violation by drafting a conditional use permit or writing a new ordinance to cover their butts while the city attorneys help at the taxpayer's expense, violate the Constitution of the United States, suppress public information, arrest those who exercise their right to free speech and demand equal treatment, and most recently erect a holiday display at L'Auberger Park without consulting the council and likely violating their own damn ordinance again. I'm sorry, that was darn. I apologize. I thought it was referring to the dam because it's there at L'Auberger Park. But anyway, there is a season's greeting sign that far exceeds the maximum space limited to 32 square feet for city events on city property. Staff-sponsored and sanctioned events have to be approved by the City Council, whether it is the craft show or the antiques and collectibles fair, etc. There's another banner that reads Happy Holidays from the Lindbergh Lions and another on the engine that reads Season's Greetings, Lindbergh Lions. There are 3 total signs mounted on the engine alone. All of these Lindbergh Lions signs are illegal off-premise signs, as the Lindbergh Lions don't operate from this location. This is a city-owned property. Why has the city chosen once again to violate their own ordinance? They are begging to be sued again. Take a look at the photos. When Alderman Crowder asked who authorized this placement of a holiday display on city property at the council meeting, on the 1st of December of 2014, he did not get an answer. I wonder why. I'll bet Greg Kimmon, the new Public Works Director, authorized this, following in the footsteps of Jerry Lochner, who made many a blunder. If Greg did this without having authority to do so, what will be his consequence? Well,
You
don't
know,
hold your breath.
it's too small, you can't see it, but I'll point out that right here there are no trespassing signs. So in order to measure these signs, I'd have to violate the law, and I'm not about to do that. So I went to Greg Kimmon and asked him if I could have permission. This is 2 days ago now. At City Hall, I said, can I get permission to go in there and measure those signs? Because it's city park, it's public park.
Right.
Why have they forbidden everybody to go into a public park?
Yeah, that's
See, to
fine.
shut off a park, they have to approve that by council too. Like they do for Antiques and Collectibles Fair and the craft show, they have to do a large scale event kind of thing, and they haven't done that. They've closed off and made it illegal to enter a public park for evidently some period of time now, and my question to him was, to Ben Olson, the zoning administrator, who's also the sign enforcer, is this going to be allowed to be left up through Christmas? Just because they want this to be, even though it violates the city sign ordinance?
Mm-hmm.
It was so important to pass a sign ordinance that met constitutional muster, and yet they aren't willing
To enforce it.
to enforce it fairly,
Right.
which makes it likely that they're going to be See, if they don't do this right, if they enforce this unfairly, someone can mount a challenge in the future for unfair enforcement.
I wonder who might do that. Well, we're about halfway through the program now.
Okay.
And we've got another very important topic we want to discuss.
Yes, and Theresa and I are passionate about peace, have been for all of our lives. We've both been activists for some period of time. Let's see, we have to turn it this way.
Some of it since the 60s.
This is our World Peace flag, and this is also the flag that the library board decided not to allow us to fly in honor of Carnegie at the library. They thought this might be controversial.
In spite of the fact that Carnegie was himself a pacifist and ultimately a pacifist.
Well, he's given more money on behalf of peace and peace education through libraries and so on than anybody to date, ever. And our library is named after him, and yet we can't fly. I offered to donate every flag going forward for years because I have a lot of these flags.
Yeah.
So if it got ruined or whatever, there's nothing controversial about this flag.
You gave me one, and I had it hanging in my yard for
Right.
a long time. And finally, it was just so ragged and tattered, and the wind pulled it down. And I said, "Okay, it's time for you to retire."
Right. But Theresa and I think you were with me at the Brainerd Library when Kathy Kelly came to speak. She's
Yes.
a peace activist that goes worldwide with her protest. And we're going to bring you up to date on some issues with drones and privacy and all that. So go ahead, Theresa.
Okay. Kathy Kelly and Georgia Walker go on trial in Missouri. Kathy Kelly, co-director of Voices for Creative Nonviolence, and Georgia Walker, director of Journey to a New Life, a program that helps ex-prisoners get work and housing, will go on trial Wednesday, December 10th, 2014. That was yesterday.
Yeah.
In federal court in Jefferson City, Missouri, charged with trespassing in their drone war protest at Whiteman Air Force Base on June 1st, 2014. In October 2012, federal judge Matt Whitworth, who will preside at the Kelly Walker trial, sentenced drone war protester Brian Terrell to 6 months. Am I right?
Yeah, to 6 months.
Okay.
Brian Terrell spent 6 months in a federal prison because of his peace activism. He didn't do anything wrong. He just stepped over a fine line, some kind of boundary that they had drawn, and he stepped over it, and they arrested him for that.
So, and the same judge who is going to be here, or will have heard yesterday,
Yeah.
the case of Kathy Kelly and Georgia Walker.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to Georgina Shanley in Southern New Jersey for sending notification of a hearing that will be held on December 10th to consider the problem of integrating drones into U.S. airspace. Notably, no one has been asked to testify on the challenges to privacy presented by drones. And of course, that's something you and I have been talking about for years. That is not surprising because the hearing is being chaired by Congressman Frank Lobiondo, a Republican from southern New Jersey, member of the House Drone Caucus, and the recipient of $112,750 in campaign contributions from aerospace industrialists involved in the drone business, according to OpenSecrets.org.
And aerospace is one of the main makers of a lot of the drones nowadays.
Wherever there's a problem, follow the money and you'll find out why.
That's right.
On December 12th, which is tomorrow, there will be a counter-drone protest at the White Plains, New York office of Congresswoman Nita Lowey that draws a connection between U.S. drone attacks and police killing and harassment of people of color in the United States. That will be very interesting, won't it? On Monday, the 15th of December, from 3 to 5 p.m., join North California activists united against drone warfare and global militarization at Beale Air Force Base for a monthly protest, if you happen to be in the neighborhood. Drone protest planned for Pennsylvania governor's inauguration. In what appears to be the first such protest, the Brandywine Peace Community in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is planning to demonstrate at the January 20th, 2015 inauguration of Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf to get him to oppose the opening of a drone control center at the Horsham, Pennsylvania Air National Guard Base. Bob Smith, Brandywine's coordinator, says, yes, the Drone Command Center is federally funded, as is the entire PA National Guard, PA Pennsylvania National Guard, and Air National Guard, as in all probability is all 51 states under the federalization of the Guard in time of war provision. 51 states, is he including Puerto Rico, do you think?
I don't know.
Puerto Rico is another very interesting topic. Now I've lost my place. However, the governor is head of the Guard, and the command center is being established on Pennsylvania state land, home to William Penn's and the Quakers' holy experiment of living together in peace.
And before you read the back part here about Kathy Kelly's statement, let's bring this local, okay?
Yeah.
Camp Ripley trains on the Shadow and the Ravens. Both of those drones can be weaponized. And that is the reason why we do our drone protest. Theresa and I and everybody that we protest with, or most of them anyway, don't care who we're lobbing the bombs at and who we're trying to assassinate with drones. It's just wrong. Morally, it's wrong.
It's wrong. And of course, one of the problems with modern warfare in its entirety, including helicopters dropping bombs and planes dropping bombs, and in everything that's been happening in this century, the problem with it is that it is so distant from the blood on the ground that people tend to become irresponsible with it. And it feels more like a game than a war, a combat.
Right. And
speaking of games, drones are manipulated from thousands of miles away from the targets in many cases. So, and they're operated like a video game. So we're training a whole nation of young men mostly, but also some women, to play video games so that when their time comes, they can be that much more lethal.
And these drone operators, the people that are stationed at Air Force bases out in western United States, stuck in little cubicles and have to push a button when to decide to kill somebody, they are suffering from post-traumatic stress at an enormous rate. And here's something funny that I put up a blog yesterday, and I'm real serious about this, folks. What if Robin gets a drone for Christmas? Think about it. I asked a couple of years ago of the city council, did they have a drone policy? Did the police department have a drone policy? Guess what? They don't. So it's fair game. What if Robin gets a drone? It's not illegal for her to fly a drone. You just have to stay within the rules.
It's not even expensive.
It'd be a great way for me to get information.
Yes, it would be. If she can't trespass in Leverger Park, she can just send a drone to measure things.
I could indeed use it for just that purpose this week if I chose to do that. So think about it. What if Robin gets a drone for Christmas?
And of course, the terrifying part of anybody getting a drone, any private citizen, is that they could then just go on any kind of a tear they wanted to go on, spying on their neighbors, and the whole thing is just ridiculous and scary. We've only got about 5 minutes left, so
Okay.
let's get right to this.
Yep.
On International Human Rights Day, December 10th, and that again was yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
two civil resistors against the drone warfare came to trial in Jefferson City, Missouri. Why? For trying to say at Whitman Air Force Base that killer drones, some guided by remote control from Whitman, am I saying this right? Whiteman. I'm sorry, it's Whiteman Air Force Base. Violate people's right to live. The resistors will speak December 9th, the night before the trial, and so on. The resistors are Kathy Kelly, co-leader of the Chicago-based Voices for Creative Nonviolence, and again Georgia Walker, director of Journey to New Life, a Midtown KC program that helps former prisoners obtain jobs and housing. KC would be Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly and Walker offer bread and an indictment to guards at Whiteman Air Force Base near Knob Noster, Missouri on June 1st. The guards accepted the bread but refused the indictment, which condemned the remote control of killer drones from bases, including Whiteman Air Force Base. Because Kelly and Walker had stepped across a designated line on the road toward the base, they will be tried, or they were tried, 9 a.m. in the federal courthouse in Jefferson City before Judge Matt Whitworth. In a similar case in 2012, Whitworth gave sentences of 6 months, 4 months, and probation, depending on factors, including the defendant's histories of civil resistance. She asks, and this is who Kathy Kelly, how can we tolerate these extrajudicial executions done in our name?
Mm-hmm.
These are weapons of mass destruction which are not making America safer. These drones are actually being used to recruit individuals to engage in anti-U.S. activities.
That's correct.
In the name of permanent and total war on terrorism, we are committing human rights violations.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and of course that brings us to the whole idea of the CIA and their torture devices to try to obtain information from detainees, which is another thing we could do a whole show on. But anyway, Kelly lived in Iraq and Gaza during heavy bombings and has more recently visited Afghanistan about a dozen times as a guest of Afghan teenagers determined to live together interethnically. Things going on in this world that we wouldn't hear about if it were not for people in their blogs and disseminating the information. Mm-hmm. Her Afghan friends have been directly affected by drone surveillance and bombings. She says that she and Walker offered the guards bread June 1st as a gesture of goodwill, quoting her now. Breaking bread together is a sign of hospitality in cultures all over the world, mm-hmm. and it's something I know my friends in Afghanistan, Gaza, Iraq, and the West Bank would understand. Kelly has herself experienced terror from U.S. attacks in the Mideast. I have lived with people who have shuddered on the ground under air attacks, some of which are carried out by drones, and some of which have occurred because of information collected by drones, she says. I have been with children while Hellfire missiles were aimed at their street and listened as U.S. Air Force planes shrieked through the skies overhead. I've been at the bedsides of children whose bodies were ripped apart. And I've been with families who have exhumed the bodies of their children and held funerary rituals. I've been with young teenagers accompanying their fathers and uncles to exhume the bodies of victims. I cannot pretend that these people haven't entrusted me with their grievances and asked me to please beg the government of the country where I lived to stop the airborne surveillance and attacks. Wow, she's very articulate.
And let's bring this local. Reality is, what if Fort Ripley was lobbing bombs at Little Falls? What if Swanville was lobbing bombs at Bolus? How many of you would use your voice and use your body to do some kind of action to stop it? Okay, let's not pretend this stuff is somewhere else and it's not affecting us, because it is.
Or even if it were not, that doesn't mean we should condone it.
That's correct. Even if it never comes home, but I bet you it will. Eventually, some other nation is going to get hold of some kind of technology. We're not the only smart nation in the world. And how dare we expect or pretend that it's not going to come home? Some other country isn't going to find a way to put a drone in our skies to do harm to us. How the audaciousness of that is just unbelievable. One quick thing before we leave, and that is that recently there was this article in the paper, Morrison County Record,
yes. Isn't that interesting?
December 5th, transgender policy passed by MSHSL. Okay, and see, The reason I'm showing you this is because look at the picture with all the young kids standing. What are they holding in the back of those individuals, those board members?
I wonder if we have to, yeah, signs.
Well, I don't know if we have to quit. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
But I want to continue and say this because at least in my film it'll get in.
Mhm.
Okay, so they're holding signs. I wonder if any of those board members feel threatened by those signs.
It's a good question.
Why did those board members allow those young people, and there's some adults in that picture too, yeah, sorry, to stand right behind them? Didn't they feel threatened?
Mhm.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
Some council people said they felt threatened because
Right, for signs.
I was so close to them. And yet, in the conference room where we used to hold, the work sessions used to be held, Theresa and I would sit like this far from the backs of these same people.
Yeah.
They weren't afraid of me
within
then.
reaching distance of everybody then, yeah. It's just, it's a matter of convenience. People make up stories to support their own side.
Right? And so my response to that post, this article, and it was December 5th, and that's also when the article was about Ferguson. My response is, interesting and important part of the picture, a plethora of signs were used, many to exercise their free speech. Notice also the proximity of those people holding those signs to the board. Do you suppose those board members felt intimidated, disturbed, angered, or frustrated by those signs, or by the people holding them? If not, why not? Do you suppose that board had enough common sense to know that those folks were exercising their free speech?
All over the world, people are getting together.
And just in case there's enough time, I don't know if we're allowed to go over our 30 minutes, but in case we are, I just want to read another response to Jody Olson's letter to the editor, which was also in last week's paper. Rules apply to everyone. Here's what my response was to her letter to the editor. The citizenry of Morrison County, as well as the entire nation, are on a slippery slope towards having no rights at all. Dissent is essential for sound governance. Equal rights are an inherent right of every United States citizen. Fact, it's the law. Like the sign on my hat that went right over their heads said, costly mistakes made here on a regular basis. How many more thousands of dollars will be wasted trying to shut me up? How many times will they violate my constitutional and equal rights before they learn? A lot of wisdom and deliberative thought is exercised by dissenters and protests before an action is taken. Proper planning is my forte. I have countless hours invested in knowing the facts before I speak out or act. The judge's decision to order the PERT class is disconcerting. Most folks, including the jury, aren't aware that the city broke their own law by not voting to authorize 2 banners before erecting them. You see, on June 3rd, 2013, they were to vote on erecting a large zoo event banner, the one with the Black Panther on it and the glaring yellow eyes. And another one for the golf course. On June 3rd, this was, okay? They abruptly ended the meeting before they did any city business, including voting on those banners. Then on June 5th, before the Friday meeting, the city chose to erect the banners without proper permit. So in other words, the city broke the law again, their own sign ordinance. The banners, and this is in the minutes, you can see that they didn't approve it until Friday the 7th when I was escorted out or arrested, however you want to look at it. Then, okay, the banner permits were voted on during the June 7th meeting after the police escorted me out. So who really broke the law? Again, it was the city. They regularly either skirt the law, rewrite the law to suit their own purpose, or ignore them completely till somebody blows the whistle. I have countless examples I can prove. When will people wake up and realize my activism will continue because they provide a reason? Nobody should be content when power brokers are corrupt at any level of government. Give them an inch and they'll take miles. That's how opportunity hoarders think. They actually believe they're special and privileged and above everyone else. The buck stops at City Hall. Everyone with even a shred of common sense better contact their elected officials and insist they comply fairly with every law in their books, or eliminate the laws they won't.
And then allow everyone to behave properly. Well, that's it. We're way over our time limit, and probably this won't be on channel 180, but I want to extend season's greetings. I know Robin does too, whether you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or winter solstice or Chinese New Year. This is a time of the year when we celebrate. Strangely enough, this dark time of the year, we suddenly get hopeful and start making plans for what comes next, and I hope that we'll all be doing that in the weeks and months to come.
That's true. And one other last thing, I asked via email April of this year to give the invocation at the beginning of the first council meeting in January. I have good solid reasons for wanting to give the invocation. I'm well within my legal rights to ask that. There's already been precedent set about that. I asked at the last city council meeting, would they please give me an answer, because I've been treated rudely again and not even had a response, although it was in the packet a few months ago. So all the council members are aware of it. I asked publicly during the last work session, could I please have notice by this coming Monday night's meeting so that I can properly prepare to give that invocation, and we'll see if they respond to that. Thanks
So
for
we're
watching.
watching Channel 180 for the city council meetings as well. And thank you for watching. Can we talk? Let us know if you'd like to come and be a guest with us at any time. We'll fit you in, regardless of the opinions or findings you'd like to share.
Thank you.
Bye.